folks going to be here for your session? Is everyone in here for your breakout session? Yeah. Okay.
And Brian was going to put up the PowerPoint on the screen.
Over here?
Yeah, what?
Yeah, so he's helping out with Jen getting her set up, so hopefully he'll be able to support you on that. So,
okay.
Yeah. He's a professional. I'm just a guest.
No worries. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I think we should get started.
Hello, hello. So my name is Josh Malarkey, use he, him pronouns. I'm with Showing Up for Racial Justice, Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, or Surge 3A for short. And I'm going to pass it to my colleague Lynda here.
And good morning, I'm Lynda Davis, and I'm also from Showing Up for Racial Justice, Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, and thank you for coming. So I use she, her pronouns, and I'm one of the coordinators for our chapter, which is what we said, Showing Up for Racial Justice, Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, and it stands for Surge 3A. And our organization was founded in 2009, the National Surge, after Obama was elected and there was a lot of racist backlash. Showing Up for Racial Justice started to specifically organize white people into the racial and economic justice movement. And our chapter started in 2016, and we've been working ever since. And so we work through community organizing, mobilizing. We do legislative action and education, and we support our accountability partners, including the Coalition for Atonement and Repair. We have 2 members from that group in here, and our other accountability partners are CASA and the Anne Arundel County branch of the NAACP and the People Builders. So those are the Black-led groups that we work with. And so Surge specifically works with Black-led groups and with accountability. So Surge meets monthly, and this would have been our monthly meeting, so we're here instead, and we encouraged our members to attend today. And so we did have a PowerPoint presentation that they're getting keyed up, so that will be shown in a minute, and we can send the slides to anyone who's interested. So as part of our presentations, we do a land acknowledgement, and we want to acknowledge that we're on the stolen, unceded land of the Piscataway Conoy Nation and the Susquehanna tribe, and we are also on the Broadneck Peninsula where kidnapped Africans were enslaved. So we're committed to keeping this in our forefront and to fighting to repair the harms against humanity.
All right, and so our goal today is to provide you with everything you need to know about how the Maryland General Assembly works, specifically the legislative process. So we'll call it the MGA for short, General Assembly. And the session next year is starting on January 14th. So this is kind of a primer for how we can know how it works and when to take action. So we'll be covering an example of a bill last year that was supported by one of our accountability partners to try and understand how the legislative process works. And we also want to acknowledge that we're not experts, but we're doing our best to teach what we've learned through experience. So we want to honor that the learning process isn't always perfect, and that's all right. So we encourage questions and feedback from you all at the end. So we will do our best to save some time for discussion. Not sure about the PowerPoint yet. Well, it also might be a little hard to see some of the images.
Sure.
So I'll pass it to Lynda, where she's going to give a brief overview of what the General Assembly looks like, or what it's made up of.
So, and I know we're here probably preaching to the choir that you all know a lot of this, so we'll kind of go through it quickly. The Senate in Maryland has 47 representatives, and there's 141 representatives, delegates, and For a bill to pass, someone must approach their legislators to introduce a bill. If the legislator agrees to sponsor the legislation, the bill is drafted by the Department of Legislative Services, reviewed by the legislator, and prepared for introduction. The Department of Legislative Services provides help to the legislative people in a nonpartisan way. The Maryland General Assembly meets in regular session for 90 calendar days each year, beginning the second Wednesday in January. So this year's session starts January 14th, and it goes till April 13th. There are special sessions if the governor calls for that, or when a majority of each house petitions the governor.
All right, so I'll first start with who is familiar with the legislative process in both houses, or have you used the General Assembly website before? Just raise your hand. All right, great. So it was probably going to be a little hard to see the tiny image, but I'll just talk through the steps. So there's a bill originates in either the House or the Senate. It goes through 3 readings after it's come out of a committee. And then if it passes one chamber, then it goes to the other chamber for the identical process, goes through readings, some amendments might be introduced, and then it goes, if it's changed at all, it goes back to the original chamber. And then if it's repassed out of that, it goes to the governor, where they can either sign it, or they have 30 days to either sign it or veto it. If they don't do anything, it goes into law. And if the bill is vetoed, then it goes back to both chambers, where it can be overridden with a 3/5 majority. And I also learned that there's an exception to this, where if it's the first year of a new session, then a veto cannot be overridden. So that would be, I guess, 2027, and every 4 years after that. That's what that was some new information to me, where if it's the first year of a new session, that a veto cannot be overridden. If that's my understanding. If that's wrong, that could be good news. But yeah, that was new to me, because I was always familiar with I guess mostly the MGA has a supermajority, so like vetoes being overridden are not uncommon.
I sent them to Kiana. Yeah, she was going to email it to Bro.
That is a good question. That's my understanding. I'm going to have to make a note and confirm that. I believe so. Yeah, I'm going to make a note to double check that. But yeah, I know the panelists did talk about some bills that have gone through and passed in one chamber and then didn't pass again, so they have to be reintroduced year after year. I know there's a lot of pieces of legislation like that I'm sure you're all familiar with. But yeah, let me make a note to double check and confirm that point, because that was some new information to me too. So next, we're going to kind of go through an example of a bill last year, HB 1222. Is anybody familiar with that one? It was the Public Safety Immigration Enforcement Maryland Values Act. So that was supported by one of our accountability partners, CASA. The simple summary of it is it's meant to ensure that federal law enforcement officers like ICE, Border Patrol, DHS, they must inform designated individuals, which is to be defined by the Attorney General. And they need to, basically, these officers need to perform or provide advance notice of when they're going to be doing immigration actions at sensitive locations like churches, schools, libraries, government facilities. So that was passed during the last session and became a law this year, so it's very new. I'm not sure if the defined terms have been laid out by the Attorney General, but There's a lot of bills like that that are becoming pretty important to pass at a state level due to, federal immigration enforcement. So I'm going to pass it to Lynda. Yeah, so that's a state law that was passed. I don't doubt it. This one specifically called out sensitive locations, which I think also needs to be defined by the Attorney General, but in my understanding, that would be places like a church or school or library. So yeah, if it's a little bit of a gray area where if you're just out in public, what are the rules then? But yeah, there's going to be a lot of pieces of legislation. I know another one supported by CASA is ending 287G agreements in Maryland at a state level. That's been kind of an ongoing battle where it's just been kind of taken on at the county level. So that's another piece I would expect to see this year too. Oh good, we have the slides. So right there at the left is what I was describing, the process of a bill, and then on the right is the MGA website, which is really helpful for kind of tracking pieces of legislation as they go through. So the upper right-hand corner, there's a search bar, and you can type in the bill name or the number. And so I typed in HB 1222, and it went straight to the page there, probably because it was from the last session. And then on the next slide, you can see what it looks like after you've found the bill. So I'll pass it to Lynda to start.
Great. So the bills go through a lot, and each of the green boxes indicates an opportunity of how we can take action and be involved, because there's many hearings. There's the first chamber does the first reading, and the bills are read into the books, and then with our example that we chose, the HB 122, there was a hearing, and first it was read into the House of Delegates, and then after the first chamber has it, they refer it to a committee, and it's assigned to a committee where it will be worked on, and a public hearing is generally scheduled during this time where testimony can be given, and the Department of Legislative Services starts preparing the fiscal or policy notes. And so with HB 122, on February 10th, it was referred to the Judiciary Committee with a hearing scheduled later that month. And these are where testimony can be provided. So Showing Up for Racial Justice has several chapters across the country. One is in Baltimore, and they do testimony writing parties where people sit down and write the testimony together. And our chapter, Showing Up for Racial Justice, Annapolis and Arundel County, we create action alerts for people to take during the Maryland General Assembly related to bills that are chosen by our accountability partners. So then it goes from the first chamber to the second reading, and then that's where some amendments can be introduced. And the bill that we chose an example, HB 122, there were 2 amendments, and then the bill was read for a second time with the amendments, and those amendments were rejected. And later, the House Judiciary Committee passed it, and there was a second reading. And then it goes to a third reading in the first chamber, and that is where the bill must be printed in its final form with all amendments, and no new amendments are allowed to be passed at that point. It requires a majority vote of the elected members, 3/5. And so with HB 122, it passed based on the third text of the bill. And it was referred to the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee, and then going through the same process there. And I'll turn that over to Josh.
Yep, so once it goes to the Senate, things actually progress pretty quickly in the Senate with this bill. So normally there would be a hearing in both chambers, and that is one of the boxes we have highlighted there. So that's where you could submit testimony, which we'll cover in some later slides. But then when it's also during the readings or it's in committee, that's another opportunity to take action and directly reach out to legislators. So in this case, when it went to the Senate, as I mentioned, it went very quick. So on March 24th, it was passed. And then basically once it passed the second reading, there was a motion to suspend a rule where there can't be a second and third reading in the same day. So that motion passed, and then the third reading passed, and then it went right back to the House. So at this stage, if there's any amendments, that's where it needs to be voted on again. But in this case, the House agreed with any amendments, and it passed on the third reading. So basically within 2 days, it went to the Senate, came right back for confirmation, and then by April 7th, there was a final text of the bill. So then after that, it was ready to go to Governor Moore. So at that stage, as I mentioned, he has 30 days where he can either sign it or veto it. In this case, he signed it on May 20th. And then, so for these next slides, we're going to talk about different ways you can actually take action and some things to keep in mind for them.
Great, thank you. And thanks, Brian, for the slides. So for this portion, I know many of you, probably all of you, have taken action. And the first part is to know your legislators, and you can find them through the Maryland website, marylandelect.net. And by typing in your home address, your legislators will come up, your senators, one senator, and you have 1 to 3 delegates. And you can see which committees they're on, and you can save their contact information into your phone. And just to remember, the representatives work for us, and they usually want to stay elected. So we want to focus on contacting our own representatives unless we're working to get a bill out of committee, or we're contacting party leaders to push a bill forward. So there are times when we contact other legislators who aren't our representatives, but in overall, they all represent us.
Right, thank you. Next slide, please. Or did you already do did you do that one?
I did that, yeah.
Okay, yeah, next slide, please, thank you. All right, so first way we can take action is emailing, which is probably the most flexible way you can do it. Doesn't require a lot of time commitment. You don't need to plan ahead like submitting testimony, and you can do it in your free time, i.e. like doesn't need to be done during business hours. You can send an email and it can be received and responded to later. So some things to keep in mind. You want to make sure you let the legislator know that you are one of their constituents. So I typically include either my address or like my zip code in the email so they can see where I live. And also in the subject line, you want to be very direct, like vote yes to this bill and then put the bill number, or vote no. And then I just want to call out, that's kind of like the minimum thing you want to do, is just have it the action in the subject line, because if it's received, that is counted as an email, or it counts as a communication for their office. So, but even better than that is adding some of your own text, maybe a personal story, or just like some reasons why you want them to either support or oppose the legislation. So the next slide, please. So yeah, again, a little bit hard to see it, but it's meant to show an email template where the green part is kind of what you would want to put in, and maybe this is something you'd receive as like an action alert from Surge, where here's a template of an email you can send for this piece of legislation. So that's pretty quick. You can copy paste it, put in your name and address, ideally update, dear senator or dear delegate, address them respectfully. And then in the orange, we have an example of like if you want to include maybe a personal story or just something additional for them to know. I've emailed my reps before and I wasn't really expecting anything, and I did get some responses, so that was nice. I think when I was living in Anne Arundel County, it was mostly like opposing bills. So even though I would email them, they would reply back and say, they would kind of justify their position, but didn't agree with it. But it was actually nice to see that it was getting read and a response was getting sent back. So the next slide, please.
Thank you. So the next one is calling. You can call your representatives, and doesn't take a lot of time. It can be done without much planning, and you can just be as direct. Hi, my name is so-and-so. I'm asking delegate senator to vote yes or vote no. And when you call, you'll either be talking to an aide or maybe the representative themselves. And if you get a voicemail, be sure to leave a message that you're also one of their constituents and what position you're asking them to take on the bill. And some people, if you don't want to really talk to anyone, you can call at night and leave a message, and your message will be recorded as a support or oppose. And the next form of taking action is signing petitions. This is, a less effective way of getting your representative to change their mind. Still, if there's an overwhelming number of people signing a petition, it does get their attention. And something is better than nothing, and these are really easy to do. You put your name in there and hit send, and sometimes you can add information, and if you have additional information, it's good to add a personal message. And when you do fill out petitions, you're going to be added to that organization's email list, which you can unsubscribe to later, or you can stay on their list. And next, we'll go over lobby days.
Right, so has anybody participated in a lobby day before? Okay, excellent, nice. So this form, let me know if you disagree, but I think it requires a bit more planning in advance. So, like for example, you do need to go and coordinate with the office to see when the legislator is going to be there, a good time to meet. And also, it's typically done with a group of people. So the reason for doing lobby days is you can help your campaign gain some influence by contacting legislator. Maybe you just want to gauge their position on a bill or just an idea. So one thing we mentioned earlier is bills do need to be introduced by legislators. So maybe your idea or issue that you're trying to turn into a campaign hasn't been posed as a piece of legislation yet. So you want to plan to go meet with them, discuss the issue, and then maybe get some feedback on how this could be introduced. Another way is another reason to do it is maybe get them to go on the record publicly. Yes, you have a question? That's a greit question. I would probably start with the MGA website. That's going to have, or it should have, a historical record of all the bills from past sessions. I guess one piece I'm not sure about is the bills are named different things each time, even though they're it's the same idea, but it has to be reintroduced in another session. So I'm not sure how I would, try and compile all of that. But at least starting on the MGA website, you could either type in parts of a name or parts of what the legislation's supposed to be, and I think you would probably get results of all the similar bills. Yes.
Good point, thank you. And you can also search by your delegate or your senator and see what they've introduced. So they each have lists on their pages of what bills they have ready or filing. And attending workshops like this. Like this morning, we heard about probably 8 bills that are coming up related to housing. Attending these kinds of sessions helps to figure out which bills are coming up. That's a very good question.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, actually. But so the way that I get informed about bills before the session's coming is if I'm on an email list for the NAACP or CASA or one of the organizations I'm trying to support, Usually they have a pretty good read on like what's going to be coming up. If I was just trying to seek out something generally, I'm not sure how I'd go about that.
Good question. Well, does anybody know how to find out about pre-filed bills? Kind of like a feed. It tells you, you tell it what it wants, and it gives you those. That's great. Yeah. Great, thank you.
Yeah, excellent. And then, yeah, thank you for the next slide. So the next thing, or I guess the last way that's pretty impactful to provide or do an action is to provide testimony. So this is another piece where it does take some time commitment and pre-planning. Like I mentioned, the hearing days will be outlined on the MGA website for like when this bill is going to have a hearing, and that's the days that testimony needs to be submitted. If it's just written testimony, last year I remember that it had to be received between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. on the day of the hearing. For oral testimony, that needs to be done at the actual hearing, and something to keep in mind is usually there's a limit on the number of oral testimonies that can be received. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like if you want to submit testimony, if you know of somebody who has like a very personal story or like can really relate and persuade the legislators there, then it's probably a good idea to give them precedent to go ahead and do the oral testimony. And as Lynda mentioned, Surge Baltimore has testimony writing days where they'll get together and just kind of, I don't know, I guess like a power hour, writing some testimony that they can then submit on the day of. And then Surge 3A has action alerts where we're like, hey, here's some templates of bills coming up that are going to have hearings this week. So here's kind of to prep you for submitting written testimony. And also another thing to know is if you're going to submit written testimony, you will need to make an account on the MGA Ledge website. And then the picture in the bottom right there is actually the public record 22. So I thought that was kind of cool to go through, and I actually did find someone from Surge Baltimore who submitted a testimony, so that was kind of cool. Yeah, any other questions on this piece here? No? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
And it is pretty easy to do an MGA account. You have to go on the MGA website, and then there's a link in the far right that says My MGA, and you go on that and click it and create an account, and that's the only way you can do the submitting written testimony by that account. And so we want to, for this presentation, acknowledge that the Surge 3A coordinating team and the legislative team created this slideshow, and primarily Jen Sell, who's giving a workshop in the other room, and she let us borrow this. She's a Surge 3A member. And again, we wanted to thank you all for coming, and if you have any questions or feedback, you can email us. And if you have any questions now, we're here unless we're being told time's up.
Well, I just, any questions or anything like that is fine. I just want to let everybody know that the sandwiches and everything are downstairs in case you're hungry. Drinks.
Excellent, thank you.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, which slide again? The last slide with the email. It's Surge Annapolis, SURJ, @gmail.com.
Mr. Hill?
Yeah, you mentioned about the veto.
Yes.
The young man said he was going to research it. I had a few minutes on my hand. I researched it.
Yeah.
Thank you to Article 17 of the Maryland Constitution says the reason why you can't override that veto that it was passed in the previous
I see. Okay. Thank you. So just to make sure I get it, a veto can be overridden each year, but you cannot override a veto from the prior session. Okay. Thank you very much. That makes a lot more sense. Thank you for confirming.
Question unrelated to that speaking today. In the earlier session, as I walked in, I heard a gentleman speaking about private home ownership and people being able to put renters in your neighborhoods. And we were talking about this particular session and how to relate to our representatives. You don't belong to an organization like the NAACP or like your organization. We just got your deal in the community. How do you know when your legislature is considering something that's going to impact you if they're not communicating outside of organizations like the NAACP and others? For example, if I'm a business owner, we have Black Friday. It's hard for you not to know Black Friday exists because I'm communicating with you through advertising, billboards, email. You're going to know it's Black Friday. How do I not know as a citizen if you're about to change my residential neighborhood?
So it's important to stay on people's listservs, like your representative has probably a newsletter that they send out, like in Anne Arundel County, I'm on the listservs for my Senate person and delegate, and then also with the county executive, he sends out a letter saying which legislation is coming up in the county council. And you have to read that to say, okay, does this bill impact me and my things I'm concerned about? So you really have to be an active citizen to find this information. And then the newspaper and anything else, if you have any suggestions, other ways to find out.
I belong to the NAACP. No, I
Usually, they send out bills to the HOA. But in my HOA, this is shared with them.
not everybody has it.
Yeah.
Right.
The best way I've been able to maintain is I've just been very intentional with not only my own as official, but others that I've saw how they either introduce or they sponsor on bills that are of interest to them. I signed up at the email, and they will send to you, and keep you updated. I also watch certain specific accounts, and so like you said, I signed up. I think that this office, and they send out their newsletter. Yes, it's a lot of junk mail that comes, but also what I've done is I've followed the local news feed. So throughout, for example, here in Annapolis, we have like other mountains that the land they say, these are local outlets that follow local news, and they give up the date or something. The name is really it's just to be very intentional. And so I studied the delegates to see what they sponsor. If someone always sponsors veterans, and that's something that's important to me, then I follow that person. I can say like Mike Rob, he's not my delegate, but he always sponsors veterans here. Legislation. So I follow him, and I got to know him because now I'm in a relationship with him. And I can tell him what my interest is, even though he's not part of what I do.
That begs the question, and by the way, I agree to subscribe to what you're saying. That begs the question about what that gentleman said behind me about what happened in Baltimore. Imagine if you're someone like you or me who is well informed, doing all the right things, but things like that still occur. How do we avoid that? This is for the informed system, not the ones who don't know. You get all the right things, yet somehow this is now a law and you have no input.
I mean, and the person that we said was supported disclosure, I am part of some other organization. So I don't do things as a issue. And it's And if you know somebody that's not involved in any, please make sure they sign up and come to meetings. American Legion. We were rotating, but yeah, same location, American Legion off of Fort Drum.
And it's also online, it's hybrid, so you can attend on Zoom. So we welcome that. So, and thank you all for coming and participating and
Yeah,
being
thank you very much.
engaged. And the questions also and the answers you all provided. So thank you so much. We'll be here, I'll be here all day. If there's any other things that come up, let us know, and any feedback, we'd appreciate hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time.